6.5%, was it? Is that what the current odds are of the Stanley Cup?
Well, and if you look at the round-by-round progression, the Stanley Cup favorite is the Vancouver Canucks.
Like, what a time to be alive!
Talking you through every goalie controversy, scoring slump, and draft lottery bust, this is the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com. Here they are, the best starting lineup we could afford under the salary cap. Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Welcome to another episode of the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Anna and Chris. I'm Chris, she's Anna. Welcome, Anna. How goes it?
It's going good. It feels a bit weird, like this preseason's finished, the season is coming, we're all waiting for that, and then just turns out the Canucks kitchen is very much open this weekend, and Patrik Allvin's cooking up stuff. So I don't know, I wasn't ready.
Yeah. We'll get into what he's been serving, the things he's been firing into the oven and tossing out. It's interesting, though, because you talk about the preseason's over, the season's about to start. But see, for a few teams, the season started while the preseason was still going on.
Yeah.
And I understand, teams are in Europe and, the coordination of all that takes a little bit of work. But trying to make sense of the NHL schedule on NHL.com is next to crazy because of how early these first two games in Europe were.
Yeah.
Comparative to where the preseason ends. Anyhow, Canucks took no part in any of that other than the preseason.
Yeah, when are we going to get to go to Europe? Just saying.
I don't know. I mean, did the Canucks ever play a game in Sweden?
I mean, you would think they must have. I remember when I moved.
I know they've gone to Asia.
Yeah, I remember when I moved back to the UK after living in Vancouver for 6 months, and my dad said, if any NHL team ever play in Europe again, we can go. And the NHL were actually, we're not going to do that anymore. And then once I moved to North America, they were like, okay, no, we will. We'll do it again.
Yeah. No, I'm curious now. I mean, it would have made sense if the Canucks were to have gone to Sweden for a regular season game. I don't remember. And I mean, I'm old. Forgive me. I forget more than I remember. But yeah.
I mean, we've got more and more Swedes, so, and we have...
Maybe we don't have to go to Sweden because we're bringing Sweden here.
We certainly don't have... We have a couple more Canadians, to be fair, this season. But last season, I think it was 2 or 3 on the team. Yeah, certainly it doesn't help with the Canada's team tag, but there you go.
Yeah. We're going to get into everything that is in lead up to the Canucks getting things underway this upcoming Wednesday. A quick scheduling note. We are here this weekend. We are off next.
Yeah. I mean, take it up with Canadian Thanksgiving. It's not the best timing for us to go off. But
Canadian Thanksgiving, though, is to coincide with the fall harvest, right?
Yeah. So not... turns out that
Thursday.
Crops have no, connection to the hockey season.
Yeah, but we have in the past sort of altered this, knowing that, okay, if a long weekend were to fall where there's some significant impact on schedule, we change things. I, however, will be away. So logistically, recording and making this happen was just not going to be possible. Yeah. So for that, we apologize. We'll be back in 2 weeks after this episode, and we'll get to recap a couple of weeks of NHL action. We'll know if the Vancouver Canucks are quote unquote the real deal.
That's right.
Because you can tell everything in 5 games. Actually, 6, 7?
5.
No, 5 games. Yeah. Sorry, I was trying to do the math in my head as to when we would record next, and I was counting 2 more games well into the month. But with all that, Anna, I think we should just rewind and find out what's been cooking in the kitchen. So news broke today that the Vancouver Canucks had traded for, what's his name? Brandstrom with Colorado. They have moved Tucker Poolman's contract off the books. They also shipped a 4th-round pick. Solution to the Vancouver Canucks defense problems, right? Slot them right into the blue line.
We'll never have problems again. Yeah.
Totally what Allvin's doing, right?
Well, the thing is, it just doesn't matter, right? Like, if that was like the thinking, obviously they wouldn't necessarily be putting Eric Brownstrom on waivers, especially when there are other options to go
What?
down.
But I thought he was solving all of the problems.
But he solved the biggest problem. So I think that
I know, cap space.
space, the magical cap space. We've debated about this back and forth, like what Canucks are going to do, because yes, Tucker Pullman is eligible for LTIR, but you have to be cap compliant going into the season. So if you are not, you are messing up that accruing cap space that would be so nice for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Allvin said, hold up, let me cook. And he came up with a solution. And I think, like, that's a pretty good one, like, regardless of what happens with Brandstrom.
Yeah. The conversation that we've had in C4 Discord and the conversation that I've been seeing sort of online is pretty consistent. Eric Brandstrom is a player that has some curiosity attached to him. And again, he's not or has not yet panned out to where he was picked. I believe he was like, mid-teens when he was drafted in 2018, 2017. I'm guessing it's around there. Anyhow, the Vancouver Canucks are, typically the team that goes and acquires or overpays for a, potential rebuild or player who needs a new locale. While those could very well be true with Berenstam, I feel that if the Vancouver Canucks do get him through waivers, they get an opportunity to see how he plays within the context of their system. They don't have this necessity to rush him into the big club right away. And as I think it was shared, it was Jay in C4 Discord. But if the Canucks were to take the calculated risk and yet still lose him through waivers, if he got claimed by another team, the Canucks will have given up. You could argue, well, they gave up Pullman and a 4th round pick for nothing. But you mentioned it off the hop. That cap space is going to be massive, especially if the Vancouver Canucks are in the mix come deadline time, because it starts to accrue, and now the team will be in a spot that they've not been in forever, where they can actually dance at deadline day.
I love that. Dancing on deadline day. And we should say, like, absolutely just, like, drawing a line under Tucker Pullman's NHL career, like, it sucks. Like, it's always sucked for him. But, like, concussions are just awful, awful, awful. And it's been kind of, there's no way it was ever getting better. So it still sucks for him. But essentially, he has money on the books, and now he is no longer that. So,
do you think anyone will put a claim in on Eric Brandstrom? I mean, there's a metric ton of players obviously hitting the waiver wire because the season's fast approaching. Teams need to become compliant. Number of rostered players and so on and so forth. Former Vancouver Canuck Gear Patera, who got claimed by Boston, back on waivers.
Yeah, Boston have
after being claimed by Boston on
cleaned
waivers.
up their mess. Their very public goalie mess. How tragic was that?
I was a little off the rails. I was talking in the complex hockey pool that I'm part of. Conversation was about Swayman signing his crazy deal, and I'm like, look at it this way: I'm never going to complain about a player getting paid. I hope Swayman makes bank. I also hope he becomes a mediocre goaltender who causes the Boston Bruins to be hamstrung for a generation. Because I'm a Canucks fan and I hold a grudge.
Oh, 100%. I mean, if Swayman had left Boston, we would want him to thrive and succeed. Yeah. And find it very funny that he stuck 2 fingers up to them. Seeing as they found a solution, it's like, well, maybe...
Well, it's like Neely going, I think there's 64 million reasons why Swayman would sign. And, well, he was wrong because it was 66.
Yeah, it's just like, 100% get your bag as a player. But 2, it's just like putting that out publicly. is just gross. Even like there was, disagreement whether that number had been offered or not, but like it doesn't matter. Just like keep your private business private. Like, and this is this is Willie Nylander's agent who got him to sit out until almost the deadline of registering the player. Like he's out for months.
Yeah.
Like, don't try him.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I just got the popcorn, enjoyed it while it was all playing out.
funny.
So the fact that I saw that he signed his deal today, there was a little bit of disappointment because I still had more popcorn.
Mm-hmm.
There was more popcorn to be eaten. But Jiri Patera could potentially...
Do you think Canucks put a claim in on him?
Because if they do, they're the only team that does, they can send him to Abbotsford without having to then put him back on waivers again, right? They ultimately can put him there. I kind of think the Canucks might.
But if they do, does that say that the injury to Demko is bad? Because as things...
I think the injury to Demko is bad, regardless.
Yeah, but what we're saying is, as things currently stand, Canucks, are going to end up with 3 goalies in Abbotsford when Demko comes back, whenever that is.
Mm-hmm.
If they claim Patera, then see you later, Ty Young. Thanks for playing. But,
enjoy Kalamazoo.
Yeah. And, fair play, Ty Young probably wasn't expecting to get a professional job, but he's showed himself very well. But yeah, it's just Greece is a crowded place, even as it is, and they don't mind writing 3 goalies in Abbotsford. I know they don't mind doing that. But does that store
the reason
everything?
why I think they would bring him back, they'd put in a claim, is that they had acquired Lankinen before the waivers. Lankinen ultimately is what made Patera, the waiver target. I don't think the Vancouver Canucks put him on waivers thinking they would necessarily lose them. It was a calculated risk.
Yeah.
Boston was in a position
trying to give him away.
Yeah. So I could see the Canucks, unless this is the thing is, are there other targets out there on the waiver wire? Let's say the Vancouver Canucks hadn't signed Lankinen. Reimer's on the waiver wire. I mean, thanks for the facial expression that our listeners weren't able to observe. But if you were just looking for a goaltender with NHL experience to serve as a reliable-ish kind of guy until your number 1 comes back. But the number 1 coming back, I think, is the biggest question mark. And I doubt that he is good.
Yeah, it's a big question mark, don't get me wrong. But James Reimer, ew.
No, I'm not okay.
I really, really would be so disappointed if Canucks went anyone near James Reimer. 1, he's incredibly mediocre, but 2, he's less than
just like our podcast,
mediocre person.
Well, that's not our podcast.
No, we're great people.
We're more than mediocre people, but we're definitely a less than mediocre show.
But yeah, I'd just be curious. I don't think I think that just delays. Don't you think that Tolopilo's development kind of depends on him having the starter job in Abbotsford? I mean, not that Canucks are
but if they claim Patera, does that mean Tolopilo doesn't get it? I still think I think it creates a competitive environment. I know nothing. And the other thing that we've sort of maybe discounted throughout all of this is putting a claim on Patera. There's a contract.
Yeah, exactly.
That contract can matter. So,
and yes, as we said, he would probably be directly into Abbotsford. Yeah, it's interesting because I do think the way Tocchet's talked about Lankinen and Shelovs was very much I have faith in these goalies, but what else is he supposed to say at the end of the day?
Yeah. Well, both Shelovs and, I would say maybe more Shelovs than Lankinen acquitted themselves well in preseason. Yeah. Case in
Lankinen
point
was okay, but he also I do have a question off the rails. Is there a reason he couldn't come to Canada before he signed a contract, like from a work permit standpoint?
I haven't a clue.
Because I was just
Maybe.
like, why isn't he already here? Why isn't he like
No.
like not necessarily in Canada, but at least in North America? Like,
Yeah,
I found it
I
weird
mean,
that he was just dealing with jet lag at practice. You know, I was like, that
I
seems strange.
hadn't considered work permit, but now that you mention
It's
it,
possible.
that could
and
be
like,
it.
I've dealt with all that BS with immigration.
Yeah, I mean,
so
I haven't, surprisingly.
I did once. No, actually, I'm not going to talk about it. I don't want to talk myself into trouble here, but needless to say, immigration is complicated. So maybe that's the reason.
And while your dad's place has phenomenal internet, which we've talked about on the show before, I would much rather you be here than have to go there to record.
Thanks.
Yeah, I don't know, but I think Sealoffs looked real good.
Unless you
last preseason game against Edmonton
shoot from quite far away.
Happens to the best. I mean, I watched Dan Cloutier in the nets. Let me tell you,
that's true.
But yeah, Sealoffs had looked real good against Edmonton for the most part, and that Edmonton team was the team that's likely going to start. So you can't argue that it was a light squad. No, both the Vancouver Canucks and Edmonton Oilers played two arguably NHL teams. But before we sort of get into the preseason conversation here, the other tiny business that came out of Allvin's kitchen in Swedish chef like Nils Höglander signed a 3x3. He's $3 million over the course of 3 years AAV. Tiny bit of business. That's a good number, I think, for a player who has some considerable upside. This year, we talked, the last episode could be an interesting year as to where he sort of finds himself throughout the season. But Höglander, to his credit, has taken whatever news or whatever presented to him by the coaching staff as to where he fits and run with it. Like, talk it. Speaking very highly of his conditioning, how he showed up in camp, how he goes and, uses all the adjectives that Talkett likes to use himself.
But yeah.
Allvin said good things, but he's the GM who just signed the deal. So
yeah,
usually you don't get anything other than that. But I like Höglander. This is a Höglander show.
Yes, I would say that we are pro Höglander. We have always been pro Niels Short King. I would say, obviously, his career hasn't been a straight line at all. He's a year removed from a year in the AHL. That was 2 seasons ago. His bounce back has been amazing, but it really isn't that long ago. But it's kind of crazy to think about the difference between sending a player to Abbotsford and sending a player to Utica. And we've talked before, Utica, what a great market for hockey, but Canucks, either were willfully ignorant of what was going on there or just really didn't have the control that they wanted. And it was,
they didn't have the control.
Miles away.
Miles away was one thing, not having a organizational presence, but also Utica got to call the shots.
Yeah.
We saw that when suddenly the St. Louis Blues were the team of choice, and the Vancouver Canucks were like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that completely sucked. Mikey DiPietro, among other people, getting booted from the team, basically in favor of St. Louis.
Whatever happened to Mikey DiPietro?
I'm pretty sure Boston put him on waivers
recently.
I saw his name come up the other day, so.
Oh, okay.
I'm guessing it was in regards to waivers.
I remember at one point he was like the goaltender that he was the future that was standing behind the future in Demko.
Yeah.
Similar to how Schneider was the future standing behind the future, which was Luongo. Schneider gets traded, doesn't see his career really pan out the way he had hoped. Also injuries. DiPietro, a whole lot of bad luck came his way.
That his NHL debut was just less than ideal. Let's say that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, poor guy. That shellacking versus the San Jose Sharks of all teams. Yeah, not ideal. But yeah, he seems like a nice kid. I hope he does well, even if it has to be in Boston.
Yeah. But as we sort of look back to the preseason, so we already discussed the fact that the Vancouver Canucks got a tidy win against the Edmonton Oilers at home, which, maybe that says something. Edmonton could have been, tired being on the road and all. What I like, though, is that the Vancouver Canucks showed the same style of hockey we got accustomed to last season for the first maybe 2/3 of the year. Aggressive, smart-ish. And if that were to carry into the regular season, that bodes well. But it doesn't take much of a glance backwards to notice that the Vancouver Canucks also had some struggles in the preseason. The defense, though, is that the Vancouver Canucks were, quite frankly, playing preseason lineups until really that last game. Maybe the one away in Edmonton, but still, what we were seeing was a Vancouver Canucks roster that was, I was going to say repeatedly depleted.
That's that sounded very good. I like the rhyme. Yeah, like there's so many arguments as to the best ways to approach preseason. You only have to see, was it 2 players getting season-ending injuries or potentially season-ending injuries in preseason to say that it might not be worth the risk. To put out your fully loaded lineup, but at the same time,
is one of those Patrik Allvin?
Yeah.
I saw. So Jay and I were at the Whitecaps match that night, and he showed me the still frame of a leg that shouldn't bend the direction as to which it was going.
Don't look at that stuff.
And I'm like, is he alive? That, it looked horrible.
Lane's had an interesting mixture of bad luck, and maybe some of that luck has been, self-generated in terms of him as a team player, but Jesus, yeah, that's really not helping things. So yeah, I don't know what the answer is, because I do think, games against Edmonton, even the previous preseason game, not even talking about the fully loaded lineup that we saw on Friday, they had a lot of heat to it. It felt like a regular season game, thanks to the sort of rivalry that's been building through last season and the playoffs.
Hey, the Canucks had too many man penalties. If that ain't a good sign, I don't know what is.
They're in mid-season form there. Although Seattle took 5, didn't they? They took a few.
Yeah.
They took 2 or 3. Anyway, and you have to think that putting special teams into a game-like situation has got to be good. You can't replicate that when you're training. Practice just isn't the same, but yeah, you kind of have to approach it as whatever is best for that. And if JT Miller, who clearly did not want to admit to any small niggle that he had,
he wasn't hurt. He was just rested.
Yeah. And he's decided that. Oh, it's so funny to me. He's just he knows what Vancouver media are like, I guess. But yeah, his media availability will never not be funny. But he looked off the pace on Friday, right?
It was his first game.
Totally. But that's the only game.
That's true.
His second game,
they can bag skate him to the end of the world for the next 4 nights.
Right. But that's the thing.
Days.
That's it. That's his, if that's enough to get him used to the pace of NHL competition again, sure, great.
Hey,
but that's his only
NHL
chance.
players used to show up to training camp to get in shape.
I know.
JT Miller, he's just an old soul. He's trying to relive those glory
Maybe.
days.
But yeah.
Back when the players would be coming into the rink smoking a cigarette, maybe smoking during the intermission, and at the end of the game pounding back cans of beer all in the dressing room.
I I grew up as a football fan in the 90s. Like, I know what it was like then. Like, literally in the when Arsene Wenger came into Arsenal, they used to have the Tuesday Club, which was getting absolutely, like, stonking drunk every Tuesday. Like, it was, like, just acceptable at that time. But yeah, obviously we're in a different day and age now. But yeah, like, preseason has sucked, don't get me wrong, and this preseason especially, in terms of, like, feeling like the injuries, the fights in the Habs Sens games where it just felt like pathetic.
Okay, that when you have your head coach asking your GM to say to the other GM, "Hey, what kind of roster you dress in a preseason game?"
Like, the whole thing was pathetic. Like, I was just like, let's just get the season started because I don't know what is happening anymore. But yeah, I forget what the question, like, where did we start?
We were talking about the Canucks in the preseason. I had suggested that they looked ready, based on the play that we saw at home against Edmonton. Yeah. That was the first and only night where we had essentially the team who will probably dress for
minus
the regular season.
Garland, who we hope to see on opening night, but you never know because once again, hockey just is cagey as all hell about injuries.
He's just resting.
Yeah.
The other thing, I hadn't seen if the Vancouver Canucks had reassigned him, but Atiradu was still with the big club. Has he been reassigned?
Nope. He's still there.
Nope.
He was the last one on the ice at UBC this morning.
Yeah. So, I mean, we think back 2 weeks ago, that was a question mark player. Like, is this a guy that stays? I had suggested of the group, Lagermag probably goes.
Yes.
But
which
Ruatu might stay, was what I had said. Although I didn't know if it was best to keep him here.
And I think he
could still be sent down.
But he's earned his spot, I think. And the way Rick Tocchet talked about Lekkerimäki, I think he was very impressed by him still. And he said is not like, I don't know, we'll probably see him again. I don't know how long he's going down for.
Well, he listens to the show. Like you and I agreed. Lekkerimäki's like one of the first names to be requested.
But like, we were both impressed with the speed at which Lekkerimäki adjusted to the NHL, the North American game and the pro game and like pro speed and pro players. But is he 100% ready for like NHL day-to-day life? No. But I think he's much closer than we thought he was. So exciting to see him play day in, day out as a professional in Abbotsford.
Yeah. The last thing I actually wanted to touch on isn't in the rundown, but the Vancouver Canucks broadcast schedule, I actually haven't seen it released in its entirety yet. That said, we are accustomed to watching the Vancouver Canucks play on Sportsnet or Sportsnet Canucks or City TV or CBC, depending on what channel Sportsnet decides to throw it on. But the NHL has a deal with Amazon this season. And the Vancouver Canucks apparently will have games shown on Amazon. Why I ask this question is that our friends down the highway, one, their broadcast schedule is legit. Like if you're a fan of the Seattle Kraken, you can watch many of their games with an antenna. Like the local NBC affiliate King will be carrying them. Also, did you know this, Anna? They have two NBC affiliates out of the Seattle area. One of them is King. Do you know the call sign of the second one?
No.
Kong.
No.
I kid you not.
Because King is
and Kong.
Presumably because Seattle is in King County.
I would presume so. And then I guess they decided, let's go King Kong.
Okay.
Anyhow, I thought that was pretty cool. But one of their fans put together this fabulous graphic showing, hey, if you want to watch the Kraken, here's what you tune into, blah, 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 blah. And then they outlined all of the games that'll be available exclusively on Prime. And that got me wondering, are we going to be in a situation where there are Canucks games exclusively on Prime?
But isn't that already the case? Aren't there 4 games that are only on Prime and not on Sportsnet?
But that I know there are 4 games, but it's the exclusively.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm actually reading the broadcast now. It says 4 games will be streamed, but it doesn't say like exclusively.
But that's what I understood.
This is a shift
on Sportsnet anyway.
Okay, well that means that's almost similar to the days of the pay-per-view.
Yeah, it is. I mean, does it suck because I just got rid of my Prime because I wasn't really watching anything on it? Sure. And they are all pretty spread out, I believe. So it's not like you can do it for 1 month or 2 and then get rid. Yeah, obviously the new NHL series, whose name I have completely forgotten, but like that Quinn Hughes is featuring in, that's on Prime. Does it seem like it's
the captains?
The captains? No.
Well, that's the name of the episode. Face Off Inside the NHL. Premieres on Prime Video globally Friday, October 4th.
Yeah. So I think Quinn is in the second episode.
Episode 4.
Episode 4. Okay. Like it's
with Quinn Hughes, Gabriel Landeskog, Jacob Trouba.
Yeah. I mean, thrilling. What a bunch of thrilling personalities. Like NHL, like people can be interesting. They're kind of taught not to be. I think the most interesting thing that seems to have been included in Quinn's episode is that he reads things. And
good for Quinn. Glad he reads things.
Yeah. He reads more things than I expected, but almost all of them are the most just like American.
Now, you're saying things. Do you know what things they happen to be? Yes, there was a
list that came out.
Okay, I was going to say I have not seen this. Like things could be many.
Like honestly, most hockey players and football players and cricket players, and I'm sure NFL and NBA are kind of the same, where they just read stuff like nonfiction and mainly like stuff. If you've heard of the like High Performance podcast, it's that kind of vibe. Like, you know, self-help, self-discipline, blah, blah, really boring stuff. But at least Quinn Hughes does read some fiction. It doesn't seem like the most interesting stuff. Apparently, Kevin Lankinen reads more kind of literary stuff rather than Quinn Hughes that reads Jeffrey Archer.
Don't know.
Yeah, he's this British kind of spy thriller writer, but he's also been to jail. Look him up in your own time. Yeah, Quentin Tarantino, like, ugh.
He writes?
Yeah, I think it's his cinema book. Not, yeah.
Okay.
The only ones that were interesting to me were How to Win the World Cup, Secrets and Insights from International Footballers' Top Managers, and Kitchen Confidential, which I have read and it's very good. But yeah, it's all a bit American for me.
Okay. Well, I think it's time to give our listeners a moment to read some things. You're listening to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Anna and Chris.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on that.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? And that because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
I really like how in the rundown you've gone with the cooking theme, because the next point that we wanted to discuss was some chemistry, and your note is such: cooking up some chemistry. Petey DeBruskin Sprong. Is Sprong a changed man who can suddenly play defense? Question mark.
There might be several question marks implied on that. I'm also realizing I was going with the cooking theme, but now I'm saying cooking up some chemistry. That's like a little bit Breaking Bad, and that's not what I intended. But
Petey's come back. And he means business.
Yeah, I mean, he has to, right? Like, he had so much pressure on him now. But I do think he's going to rise to it. And it does seem like the affable Jake DeBrusk is actually, it's a very good fit. It seems like they bought him a shiny new present that was Jake DeBrusk, and it seems to be working out.
Yeah, so it's DeBrusk, Sprong, and Heisenberg now.
Yes.
And
I mean, with a shaved head, it's not completely
crazy.
No,
I think we run with this. The title of the episode, Heisenberg. No one will get it until they get to this point of the show. Yeah. Okay. So it's nice to see that there's chemistry, but we've seen Petey have chemistry with others. I mean, Hoglander, who signed a tidy bit of business, he's been bounced off his, chemical bond with Petey.
God. Yeah.
I don't know. It's like, carbon and oxygen, or carbon's like, it takes everything.
So
that's why carbon and oxygen, and it's bad, but it's monoxide and it kills you.
And then Christie's science.
Okay. I actually enjoyed science in school until grade 9, my science teacher, he was an interesting fellow. He was very knowledgeable, but there was a student in my class who knew computers and would hand in assignments essentially with clip art. And he would, the teacher in grade 9 was like blown away by,
clip art, because
essentially, right? Like all of us students knew what this was, but the teacher is maybe not yet with it in regards to the technology side. And I just got fed up one day and I called him out. I'm like you're going to grade me for some honest effort, but that guy gets this like clip art, like diorama of, I don't know what representation. The science was even wrong, but he got a good mark because I don't think he could understand.
I'm wondering how he got clip art into science homework, but yeah.
But that's the thing. It made a little sense. Here I am drawing molecules and atoms. Anyhow, got back into it. Grade 10 wasn't too bad. Then in grade 11, I had physics and chem, and my physics teacher was still doing the bell curve. So I hadn't had a clue as to whether or not I learned anything because I fell in the group who only got a C. And when I'm sort of looking around, I wasn't confident that I was actually C worthy. So I'm like, okay, physics, that's over. And then in Chem 12, the teacher wasn't really into teaching. And I'm not the type that you give a textbook to read the book. Like I need the hands-on, I need the auditory component. And so that was that for anyhow. Anyhow, that was Chris in a nutshell. Well off the rails. Back to the line. I don't think Sprong is a changed man. No, I honestly don't.
We've talked about this before. Where if anyone could change him, we Rick Tocchet, but I don't think he could change him.
But we do know Petey is defensively responsible.
He is.
I think DeBrusk is looking like he is. I don't know well enough about him.
His game well enough to fully comment, but yeah.
And going back a couple of weeks, I talked about how the Vancouver Canucks got by with Pavel Bure putting goals in.
That's the net. And Daniel Sprong is
not playing
is
defense.
Not Pavel Bure. Let's be clear about that.
No.
But yes. It's funny. I literally heard. I'm not going to fully go off the rails, but Bukayo Saka's post-game interview and after the Arsenal Southampton game, where he basically was very honest and basically said, "I don't like defending, but I got to do it." Because
that's honest.
Similarly charismatic coach, Mikel Arteta, Rick Tocchet, he's kind of convinced him that it's part of their system. So I don't think Daniel Sprong's going to learn at this stage of his career, to be defensively responsible, but it's possible that he's going to learn to be more careful. If his job is to be, is to shoot, and he seems to be pretty good at that. I'm okay with it.
Well, you talk about if his job's to shoot, and he seems to be pretty good at that. Typically speaking, if you have a job and you can do your job well, as long as you keep doing it well, other stuff is sort of we can probably make do. We can work around that because you do the one thing good. It's when you stop doing that one thing you got.
Yeah.
Therein lay the issue. I wonder though, let's say he does become a defensive liability.
Sure. Like,
does Höglander get a spot back?
I mean, maybe. Like, the thing is,
but then where do you put Sprong?
The thing is with
he's not going to go down to the third or the fourth line.
No. But like we've talked about it before, Sprong's played very sheltered minutes before. Is that gonna happen again? Maybe. Like and like Höglander in contrast is just like $3 million for a first liner, even if he only if for a third liner that plays first line sometimes. That's a bargain, right? Like, second, if he gets some goals on the power play, that's a complete bargain. But I don't see, like, Höglander as a permanent addition to that line, so it would have to be, like, a real problem before. But it's, like, another option, right? Like, you know, Petey and DeBrusque, they're the pair, right? Like, you know, JT Miller and Brock Besser, they're the pair. Danton Heinen seems to be working right now, but like, if there's a part of the game, you know, late on when they need something else, then there'll be a different person on that wing. Like,
Arshbane?
He's doing pretty good. Like, I know I think he was a spare forward in line rushes today. Or yesterday.
Which is interesting considering he got goals in the last two preseason games.
And, like, he's great, but he's still, like, it's preseason.
No, rough around the edges, might be under a cell.
But, like, yeah.
But there's a little sparkle there.
For sure. I think I've always been an Archie Baines fan, especially he played very well in Abbotsford last year. He has the potential. He has the upside, like Ratu, to be like contributor at NHL level rather than a bit part, or part-time NHLer. Like, you know, there are other people in Abbotsford that can survive in the NHL: Tristan Nielsen, Christian Wolanin, those kind of players, but who've never really shown that everydayness that I think Archie Baines has. But like, I don't know. We'll see. I'm not ready to sort of go it all in and say he'll be a regular part of the lineup throughout the season. But once again, like Ratu, he's shown more promise / is further ahead than we maybe thought.
Yeah. But that, you know, brings us to something we normally talk in Rewind, but we're going to talk about here in Half Full, Half Empty. The Vancouver Canucks season opener, Wednesday, October 9th, at home against the Calgary Flames. How do you think the Canucks line up for that? Do you think you got good feeling? And Calgary doesn't seem to be doing much of anything right now.
Yeah, I mean, Calgary look better than they do last year, but like, I think they're going to be better than they are last year, but I still think Canucks are a better bet. I think like the unknown, I guess, would be Connor Garland, whether he's ready. Tocchet says yes, but who knows?
Tocchet never lies.
I'm not saying he's lying, but yeah, that fourth line, yeah, interesting. We'll see, because obviously also we have like the Luger Garland, I guess, our pair until Joshua comes back, and then we have another conversation. But yeah, I was going to say umlaut line. They're not umlauts, but whatever they call them in Swedish. Höglander, Ratu. Yeah, there's a different name for them because they're like a different letter. Instead,
umlaut?
No, umlauts like change the sound of a letter in German, but they don't. It's not a separate letter, whereas apparently it's in Swedish. Off the rails. Anyway,
not smart. I have no clue.
The point is, I think Höglander and Ratu stay together on that. I was going to say third line, quote unquote third line. And I think Bluger and Garland stay together. Wait and see what happens with Dakota Joshua. Did you hear that he was making a public appearance this weekend?
I did not.
So, that's good news, right? Like,
I think so.
Yeah, like I was like, I didn't know he was at that stage of recovery where he's ready to be like around people. So, yeah.
Well, I
like
whether he's ready to be around people or not. I mean, every person handles this differently, right? Like I somewhat off the rails, but one of the podcasts that I listened to and I've talked about on the show, Dear Hank and John, Hank Green, John Green, Hank Green had Hodgkin's lymphoma. He was diagnosed, and I said had because he is now in remission. And while he did have to wind down a lot of his sort of personal commitments, CEO of the company Complexly, and what have you, he was still contributing podcast episodes. He was still creating social media content. Like he was very public in his journey in dealing with cancer. So I'm not suggesting that's the right way or that's the wrong way. That is the way he and Patty chose forward. So if Joshua is where he is and he wishes to, be out there, good on him.
Yeah. It's just good news, I think. And I hope continues to improve and recover. But yeah.
So back to the Calgary game. Canucks get a dub? Yeah. Okay. They don't often win their first game of the season, historically at least. But I'm going to say the Vancouver Canucks get a dub. Now, looking ahead on the game on Friday against the Philadelphia Flyers, got that same feeling?
I mean, they got to win it for Edler,
True.
Do you think that they should put Eddie in? Just like he signed a one-day contract, put him in coach.
A season ago, maybe 2 seasons, sure.
Honestly,
and while the blue line has still got some question marks, I don't know if Eddie, a shift or two, addresses them.
I don't know. I would like to see it.
Is it a dub on Friday?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so it's 2 dubs. I'm going to be the downer here. I think the Vancouver Canucks might take an L. Just the hype of the Calgary win, having to stand on the ice a little bit longer, getting a little tight to start the game, and then they also are going to be looking at this road trip just after Thanksgiving. I would have to think the Vancouver Canucks aren't going to leave the Saturday. And if they do, that kind of sucks. But they're off to Florida for a couple of games, playing on the 15th in Tampa, and then the 17th in Sunrise. Though, keep an asterisk next to those dates because currently Florida's dealing with a little bit of weather.
Oh, yeah.
To really undersell it. The Canucks then go to Philadelphia for a 4 p.m. game on Sportsnet Pacific on a Saturday. And then we'll be back to talk about those 5 games before they wrap up their road trip in Chicago, which we'll get to in our next episode. But here we are at the end of our show, the end of the preseason. We will be back in 2 weeks' time where we talk about the Vancouver Canucks in the regular season and all the other things that Allvin may or may not have cooking in his kitchen.
Can we just quickly do a quick prediction to see us out? So, Tampa.
Okay, I'm going to give them a dub there.
I don't like them versus Tampa or Florida.
No, neither do I, but I'm going to give them a dub because I gave them an L against Philly. I'm going to give them an L against Florida.
Yeah, I mean,
and I'm going to give them a dub against Philly. I'm going to say this like the first 5 games is an alternating dub and L.
Okay, I'm going to say win-win, lose-lose, overtime win, or shootout win.
Okay, so
actually shootout win.
Shootout. Okay, you're getting a lot more specific. I'm not going to it, but ultimately we have the same number of points after 5 games. 6 points.
6 points.
I can live with that.
Especially going
6
to
out of
Florida,
a possible 10 to start. Yeah. I wanted to get your thoughts, just briefly. So, Robin Lehner, his contract with the Vegas Golden Knights has no longer, or what was the language? His contract situation has been resolved. Now, we don't know. We do not know the circumstances, and nor am I suggesting we should. But what we do know is the NHL has said that the contract will not count towards the cap in Vegas. What we do know is Lehner will be paid by Vegas, and that the complex situation has been resolved. I don't know what the complex situation happens to be, and if ultimately this is the decision that the league has decided upon, fine. I just don't understand why the league will say in this situation that we're going to allow a team to circumvent the cap, but yet have repeatedly gone after teams retroactively who were cap compliant.
I mean, like, it does seem to be one rule for the Canucks and with the longer contract and a rule for the rest of the NHL. And, like,
I honestly, I when people say it's a conspiracy and the league hates the Vancouver, and I constantly say, no, that's not true. There's no way a business would function.
No,
there's
like,
laws in the United States that would make this just a wasp's nest if that were true. But then I see something like this, and I'm like, I don't understand.
Like, if Gary came out and said, like, we're trying to make common sense decisions, there's special circumstances for this, what happened with the longer contract should, like, we don't want to make the same mistakes again. Like, obviously that's never going to happen.
The league could say that shouldn't have happened. Good on you for finding the loophole, and then hammer the hell out of it so no team. But no, the league was totally like, yeah, and we're going to screw you retroactively for something you can't undo because you just took advantage of a problem we didn't have the ability to
the
foresee.
two teams that probably have the worst reputation with cap circumvention are Tampa and Vegas. Like, do I care like, if Mark Stone, it's not like Mark Stone faked a appendix or whatever actually ended up happening. Like, I don't actually have a problem with what Vegas or Tampa did. Like, does it suck? Yeah, kind of. But, like, I don't actually think it's not against the rules. They did it, whatever. Without any further information, like you say, I don't necessarily think we should be getting private information. But, like, we're
not entitled to it.
What we do know is Robert Lehner didn't show for camp. He's still getting a paycheck, and Vegas are getting off scot-free. Like, there's no way for us to, like, not interpret that as that sucks. Like, if there's something that the, like, player is going through, I really undoubtedly
him getting paid, no issue.
Exactly. That's
right.
Exactly what I was going to say. But, like, if there's, it just seems from the outside like Vegas are getting away with one here.
The one piece of information, and again, it's not information, it's more just sort of a guess as to what may be occurring, is that the NHL has found that they have a problem that they need to be put under and out of the way, and that Vegas, in saying, yes, we'll continue to pay, is getting the favor from the NHL to avoid the NHL being the one left holding the bag.
Right. But
I'm not saying that discounts everything that we had just discussed, because that just makes it worse, I feel, for the NHL, because that's a team now.
It's just like people are going to ask more questions, not fewer questions with a situation like this. Like, if you want people to ask fewer questions, you got to follow like normal procedure, right? And they're not doing that.
Well,
so, like,
you and I are talking about it. A few others have, and it'll be out of the news cycle, right? And I think that's what the NHL knows, is that the vast majority of fans, they could care less.
I mean, let's be honest, it's a niche sport with even smaller group of fans that are like, talking
but
about
if it wasn't for the die-hard, best mediocre, longest-running Vancouver Canucks podcast, who's 137th in your hearts, stuff like this just wouldn't be discussed at all. Anna, we are at the end. We need to wrap things up. We've almost reached the 1 hour mark, and at 60-minute mark, the entire podcast shuts down. Mid-sentence, doesn't matter. We never go beyond that. If you reach this point of the show, thanks. Thanks for hanging out. If you happen to be a new listener, thanks for joining us. Hopefully you're going to be back. And if you've come back now for what will be our, 12th season of NHL
Wowzers.
hockey coverage or whatever, something like that. It's crazy. I have to do the math, and math has never been my strong suit. Thank you for continuing to come back. I'm genuinely curious how many of you are around in the early days of Clay and I,
because I was,
and have stuck it out to be here with Anna and me.
If so, you well done, and you predate me, so congrats.
Yeah. Was your mom listening to the show before you joined us or after you joined us?
Oh, probably before,
Yeah, it has to be, right? Your mom was probably the one who put you on to C4, right? You started
so
to totally. Hi, Anna's mom.
Hi, Mom.
But no, thanks. And I hope that you continue to join us throughout the season. We've got something lined up that's going to debut in the relatively near future. What that might be, you'll know when you hear it. Trust me. We have some things in our own kitchen cooking that hopefully will be ready to be dished out to
They're
you,
on the slow cooker.
our listeners. Yeah, exactly. We got it on low, and takes a little extra time. But yeah, I think this is, we're finally sort of free of the bonds of the old sort of network and what have you. And
doing stuff
we're able to
anyway.
do things again. But Anna, any final words of wisdom as we wrap things up?
Oh, he's really back this time. We will have real regular season games that contribute towards points on the NHL standings to talk about. Hockey's back. I can't wait.
Words of wisdom from me. When you have your young daughter with you downtown Vancouver, understand that sometimes people will have clothing choices, which mean you have to have difficult conversations with your daughter when she notices them before you.
How mysterious.
I know. Our listeners don't know. Anna does. And trust me, Anna would probably agree what occurred would blow your mind.
Yeah.
Or something else. If you've not joined C4 Discord, discord.io/C4 podcast, you can go to c4podcast.com where our back catalog and most of our episodes can be found. There's some of our oldest episodes just aren't online anymore. I have them. It's just publishing them is difficult because of how many times we've jumped hosts, and then there's been some hiccups along the way, but they exist, and we've got hundreds of episodes available for you to tune into. You can go to buymeacoffee.com/C4 podcast, or as Anna and I like to call
Buy
it,
me a pint.
where you can toss a couple of bucks our way. There's a one-off as a celebratory, hey, go buy yourself a pint for, coming back another season, or contributing monthly or annually to support the show. And all the money that you provide us goes directly into the show and the costs that we incur to record it. But if you do subscribe to us on an annual basis, not only get you a discount over the course of the monthly subscription, you get one of those exclusive C4 podcast stickers, which I will get out to you right away. None of this, you get it like a year after because I'm slow, but so long as you don't already have one into the, buttload of people in the UK do, it's exclusive everywhere else. But on behalf of Anna, A4-03, myself, Chris at Lightforce, signing off this episode of C4 with We Out.